T.O. Blaze. Hey there, this is T.O. bringing another Kerbal Space Program video. Today's video, I'm going to show you guys my little version of Skylab. Skylab, if you don't know, is the United States' first space station. It was, I think, flown up in the early 70s, and it was only in service for a short while, but it's a piece of history. And I actually have a set little kit of space-related toys for my kids, and in that kit I actually found a Skylab model. I thought it was pretty cool. So space stations have been in the news a lot recently. It talks about whether or not the International Space Station is going to be retired very soon. China's started assembling their own space station around in orbit of Earth, so kind of a relevant topic, I guess you could say. I'm using some of the Apollo style rockets to assemble my Skylab. I think they used the modified version of the Saturn V. I used my basic Apollo version and just changed the payload, and now I'm using, I think it's a Saturn 1B, a much smaller Saturn rocket to send up some of the other components, the telescope and the service module. But it's a pretty small space station. It's got I think a small crew quarter, science lab segment. It's got a telescope, like I mentioned, and it's got a service module that docks to it. I think they flew it up unmanned, and then they sent a crew up. And if not mistaken, this might be the space station where they had a lot of issues. It took a lot more effort than they expected to get it to usable condition. Here you see I'm sending the solar panels as like separate little sub-assemblies using robotic ports, and there's the telescope. I don't know how they assembled the Skylab, if it was done in multiple little launches like this, if they sent up the telescope and other parts together or separately, but I'm doing them all as separate launches just for funsies. There's a signature look, and here's the robotic parts and the I'm sorry, in this case it wasn't robotic parts. This is using docking ports. I've tried multiple ways to connect the solar panels to this ship, and I think I'll show some of the footage. The infamous Kraken attacks my ship and tears it all apart. Basically, when you have too many small moving parts, things can go wrong. So I'm using these little tugs to put the solar panels into position, and then I deorbit the tug so that you don't see it anymore. But this is all in vain. Look, now you can see the Kraken solar panels are just going wild. I'm spinning the ship, but the solar panels are doing that on their own, and they explode. So very frustrating when you're trying to build something and it just rips itself apart. So I deorbit everything, and I just start from scratch. I put the solar panels on in their normal position, fully extended, and I just built a fairing around it. That's why the top of the rocket looks so goofy. So obviously this is not how they would have done it, but that's how you got to do it in Kerbal Space Program sometimes to get it to work. And the Kraken does not affect this ship. It would if I use docking ports or if I use robotic ports. And robotic ports was my first attempt. Basically put the solar panel beams on some hinges and rotated them out 90 degrees. And everything's fine until you leave the ship and try to come back to it. When the ship loads back into physics range, that's when things start going haywire. So I'm going to go ahead and park this thing in orbit, and maybe I did keep the telescope and didn't deorbit the telescope, so I'll come back and just dock with the same telescope that I launched earlier, and all that'll be left is to send a crew up in the service module. But here you see coming up to the telescope. I'll extend all my solar panels. These should be impervious to the Kraken's attack. And I want to say I'd gotten the center mass a little off on the telescope, so it wasn't as easy to dock, but should be able to get it. And here's the signature look of the Skylab with those 4 solar panels on the telescope turned 90 degrees like that. I think I'll go ahead and adjust the orbit a little bit. Here she is. You can said, just missing a crew. There's lots of little parts and features on the Skylab that I've put that really don't have a function. They just look cool, and they kind of make it look more authentic. Here's a smaller Saturn rocket. Don't need all the extra stages of the Apollo missions where they went all the way to the moon. So I like the look of this one for sure. There's the launch escape just released in the earlier first stage. Got my big second stage. Plenty of fuel. I'm sure I ditch all the stages way before you would normally ditch them. Don't expend all the fuel. There's the service module. I'll go ahead and talk to my Skylab, transfer some crew, leave them up there. I believe this is not on my career mode. This should have been on my sandbox mode, because I've got those original Kerbals, Bob and so forth. They're all busy doing other missions in my career mode. Anytime I'm doing like historic recreations like this, I sometimes just do it on my sandbox, so I'm not worried about cost and not worried about leaving Kerbals up in space for extended periods of time. And I think I need to turn SAS off, because right now the ship's trying to correct the wobble this way and that way. It's not supposed to do that. So when I get back into the ship, I'll turn off SAS. So here's the Skylab. Got my crew on board. Got my Kerbal in the telescope, ready to do some science. And a pretty fun little mission. Hope you enjoyed watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and I appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you next time.